At 10 years old, I ran my mom's vitamin distribution business. I had 47 regular customers, detailed sales records, and made $600 a week. When police found my notebook, I proudly showed them my business model and customer tracking spreadsheets. I wore my handmade entrepreneur pin to court and asked the judge who would inherit the business after mom got 12 years for making me deal drugs without me knowing. When I was 10 years old, I took over the family business because that's when mom first asked me to help with her vitamin distribution service. I thought I was the luckiest kid alive. While my other classmates were running lemonade stands or babysitting, I was learning how to count cash, how to do taxes. And as for why she picked me instead of using the mail, I just figured she trusted me enough to provide that personal touch customers appreciated. So even when I had to walk 6 blocks in the rain carrying my backup supplies, or when Mr. Jenkins yelled at me for waking him up during his afternoon nap, I felt a deep sense of importance. And whenever my teacher or friends asked what I wanted to be when I grow up, I'd brag about being an entrepreneur. They'd always be super impressed that I even knew what that word meant, and I'd bask in their praises about being ambitious. No one ever questioned why I knew legal terms like intent to distribute, why I almost always had hundreds of dollars of cash in my book bag. Always just thought I was a kid pretending to play a role. So this one afternoon, when mom came out of her bedroom looking rough, I ran up to her with my notebook. "Mommy, look, I got 3 new customers today all by myself. They said I was so smart." "That's great, baby," she said, not really looking at me. Her hair was greasy, and she kept scratching her arms. "Baby, what day we on?" "Thursday," I answered, bouncing on my toes. I thought if I was excited enough about the business, she'd want to hear about my sales strategies, until suddenly, her face went white. "No, no, 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 no." She grabbed the calendar off the wall. "Where the fuck is Carlos? He said Wednesday. He promised he'd be here on fucking Wednesday." She started pacing, pulling out her phone, punching numbers. Pick up, you piece of..." When she threw the phone at the wall, I knew what she needed. "Mom, I collected money early from the Torres family today. 200. Suddenly, her face softened like magic. $200. She counted it twice to make sure, then pulled me into a hug. "That's my smart baby, my lil hustler. You just saved mommy's whole day, you know that?" But I barely had time to feel the hug she gave me, because in just seconds, she was grabbing her keys and running out the door. "I'll be back. Lock the door right." I heard her car screech out of the driveway. I didn't even get to ask if we could eat dinner together, so I did what I always did back then for fun. I made myself mac and cheese and practiced my sales pitch to the empty kitchen. And like any good business owner, I organized my detailed records, customer profiles in a marble notebook. Mom reviewed my notes every night, praising my organization skills. But as I got older, I started to observe strange things about my mom. The way her hands shook as she arranged the bottles, the way she'd recount the same capsules 3 times, how she'd panic if even one was missing. She'd send me to my room while she made her supplier calls, but I could hear her through the vents, begging someone named Juan for just a few more days, promising she was good for it. Once I heard her crying, saying something about using her kid, but that she had no choice. I figured running a business was stressful for adults, so to make life easier for her, I started recognizing which customers were difficult. Mr. Torres, who'd blow up my phone if I was 5 minutes late. Jennifer from the yellow apartment, who'd meet me at the corner instead of her door, always looking over her shoulder. The college kids who'd pool their money and buy in bulk, joking about studying better with our help. And come rain or shine, homework or no homework, I was working that corner and selling vitamins. Mom started giving me bigger commissions, $20 some weeks. I saved every penny in a shoebox, dreaming about buying a real office someday. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. I'd spent all day looking for my marble notebook and couldn't find it anywhere. Luckily, the principal called me into her office. There were 2 police officers standing beside him, with a woman in a pink suit who said her job was to help families. I immediately breathed a sigh of relief, because right in her hand was my marble notebook. The officer spoke gently. "We need to know about your mom's vitamin business." I plastered a huge smile on my face. It was the first time anyone had specifically asked me about it. I explained everything proudly. My roots, my record-keeping system, my customer service standards, told them about my business cards, printed at the library, my collection methods, my plans for expansion. I expected them to be impressed, to tell me how amazing my system was. Instead, their mouths were wide open, exchanging looks I didn't understand. I didn't know it at the time, but my life was about to change forever. Full story on channel, link below. The woman in the pink suit leaned forward, her voice soft but serious. "We're going to need to call someone to pick you up while your mom helps the police with some questions." My heart started racing. Mom was helping the police? That sounded important. Maybe they wanted to learn about our business model. I bounced in my seat, eager to help. "Can you call Jennifer from the yellow apartment? She's mom's friend and one of our best customers." The adults exchanged another look. The woman nodded slowly and asked for Jennifer's number. I rattled it off from memory, proud of my customer database skills. 20 minutes later, Jennifer walked into the principal's office. The moment she saw the police officers, she froze in the doorway. Her face went pale, and her hands started trembling just like moms sometimes did. "Hi, Jennifer," I waved enthusiastically. "Guess what? I showed the police all our business records. They were super interested in our customer list and delivery schedules. I even told them about your standing order for Tuesday afternoons." Jennifer's legs seemed to give out slightly. She gripped the doorframe, staring at the officers like they were holding GNs instead of notebooks. The woman in pink stood up quickly, guiding Jennifer to a chair. "It's okay," the woman said gently. "We just need you to take care of him for a little while." Jennifer's voice came out as a whisper. "Where's his mom?" "She's helping us with our investigation," one of the officers replied. I watched Jennifer sign some papers, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. The woman in pink kept patting her shoulder, but Jennifer looked like she might throw up. In the car, I buckled myself in and immediately started planning. "Jennifer, can we stop by the Torres house? It's Thursday, and I need to collect their payment. Mr. Torres gets really mad if we're late, and he already texted me 3 times today." Jennifer slammed on the brakes so hard I jerked forward against my seatbelt. She pulled over to the side of the road, threw open her door, and vomited onto the pavement. I watched in confusion as she gripped the steering wheel, her whole body shaking. "Are you sick?" I asked when she finally closed the door. "Mom gets sick sometimes too. Do you need some vitamins?" "I have extras in my backpack." Jennifer started crying then, big gulping sobs that made her shoulders shake. She kept looking at me in the rearview mirror like I'd said something terrible. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I didn't mean to make you cry. Hey, I have a great idea. What if we start a customer referral program? You bring in new customers and you get a discount on your next order. I've been working on the pricing structure and everything." Jennifer's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. She drove the rest of the way to her apartment in silence, tears streaming down her face. I kept talking about profit margins and customer retention strategies, trying to cheer her up with business talk. Her apartment smelled like cigarettes and something sour. Empty bottles covered the coffee table, and dishes piled up in the sink. Jennifer collapsed on the couch, putting her head in her hands. "Can I use your phone?" I asked. "I need to call the Torres family about tomorrow's delivery, and the Johnsons haven't paid for last week yet. Oh, and I should probably check in with the college kids to see if they need their usual Friday order." Jennifer looked up at me with red, puffy eyes. "How many customers do you have?" I puffed out my chest proudly. 47 regular customers, plus about a dozen who order occasionally. Mom says I'm a natural salesman. Want to see my customer tracking spreadsheet? I made it on the library computer. Jennifer stumbled to the bathroom and threw up again. When she came back, she was holding her phone with shaking hands. I watched her dial a number, speaking in a rushed whisper. "It's worse than we thought. The kid. He knows everything. Every customer. Every delivery. Oh God, what have we done?" I didn't understand why she was so upset. Of course I knew everything. I was the one who managed the customer database. Jennifer hung up and immediately dialed another number. This time, she was crying so hard I could barely understand her words. "I can't do this. I can't. I'm sick too, okay? I'm sick and I can't take care of a kid who, please, you have to send someone else." The woman in pink arrived an hour later with another lady who smiled too much. Jennifer was curled up on the couch, rocking back and forth. She'd been like that ever since she'd hung up the phone. "I'm sorry," Jennifer kept saying. "I'm so sorry. I can't. I'm sick too." I didn't understand why adults kept saying they were sick. Maybe there was something going around? I made a mental note to increase vitamin distribution in the neighborhood. The new people drove me to a big building with bright lights and lots of offices. The woman in pink stayed with me while the other lady talked on the phone. They kept asking if I was hungry or tired, but I was too excited about all the attention to eat. "We found emergency foster parents," the woman finally said. "They'll take care of you tonight." An older couple arrived, looking nervous but kind. The woman had gray hair and soft eyes. The man kept his arm around her shoulders. They signed more papers while I organized my backpack, making sure all my business supplies were secure. "What's in the bag, sweetheart?" the foster mom asked gently. "Just my business stuff." I unzipped it proudly. Customer lists, delivery schedules, and today's collections. I pulled out the roll of cash, counting it carefully. $600. It was a really good week. The Torres family paid early, and Jennifer gave me a bonus for excellent customer service. The foster parents' faces went white. The foster dad stepped back, pulling out his phone. The foster mom stared at the money like it might bite her. "I also have my payment tracking sheets," I continued, pulling out more papers. "See? Every customer, every payment, every delivery date for the past 2 years. Mom says good record keeping is essential for any successful business." The woman in pink took the papers from my hands, scanning them quickly. Her face got paler with each page. She whispered something to another worker, who rushed off down the hallway. The foster parents were having a heated, whispered conversation in the corner. I heard fragments. Period. Can't expose our other kids. Safety concerns. Not equipped for this. 20 minutes later, they were gone, and I was being driven to another building. This one had lots of kids and bunk beds and a TV room that smelled like old socks. "This is a temporary shelter," the woman in pink explained. "Just for tonight while we figure things out." I nodded, already planning how to continue operations from this new location. Maybe some of the other kids would want to become customers, or even business partners. The shelter had strict rules about belongings, but they let me keep my notebook after checking it thoroughly. A staff member's face went green, reading through my customer profiles. She whispered urgently to her supervisor, who made several phone calls. That night, I lay in the unfamiliar bunk bed, listening to other kids snoring and crying. I pulled out my notebook, reviewing tomorrow's delivery schedule by the dim emergency lighting. The Torres family would be expecting their order. Jennifer usually needed a Friday refill. The college kids always wanted extra for the weekend. I'd have to find a way to contact them all, let them know about the temporary disruption in service. Good customer communication was crucial during transitions. Mom had taught me that. The next morning, I woke up to see my mom's face on the TV in the common room. The news anchor was saying something about shocking child exploitation and substance operation using 10-year-old courier. I sat up straighter, excited to see our business getting media coverage, free advertising. Mom always said publicity was expensive, but here we were on the morning news. "That's my mom," I told the kid next to me. "We run a vitamin distribution service together. I'm the head of customer relations." The other kids backed away from me like I had something contagious. One older boy shook his head. "That ain't vitamins, stupid. Your mom was making you deal substances." "No," I insisted. "They're vitamins. Special vitamins that help people feel better. I have the whole product catalog memorized if you want to hear about our different options." The boy laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. "Man, you really don't know, do you? Your mom had you pushing pills to junkies." I was about to argue when a familiar face appeared in the doorway. Ms. Rodriguez, my teacher, stood there with tears in her eyes. The shelter staff let her in, and she sat down next to me carefully, like I might break. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice thick. "I'm so sorry. I should have known. All those presentations you gave about being an entrepreneur, all those business plans you showed me. You said I had the best business model in the class," I reminded her proudly. "Remember? You gave me an A+ on my presentation about customer retention strategies." Ms. Rodriguez started crying harder. "I thought you were just pretending playing business like kids play house. I praised you for being creative and ambitious. I never imagined." She pulled me into a hug, and I felt confused by her tears. Why was everyone so upset about my success? A man in a suit arrived after lunch, introducing himself as my lawyer. He had a kind face but serious eyes. He sat down with a yellow legal pad and started asking questions about the business. "This is great," I said, excited to finally talk to someone who seemed interested in the details. "So we have 47 regular customers, right? The Torres family usually orders the largest quantities. They pay $200 every Thursday, sometimes more if they need extra. Jennifer from the yellow apartment is Tuesday afternoons, always meets me at the corner of 5th and Main." The lawyer wrote frantically, his face getting more and more troubled with each detail I shared. When I started listing the college kids' names and their regular orders, he held up a hand. "Do you understand what these vitamins really were?" he asked gently. "Mom said they were special vitamins that help people feel better when they're sick," I recited. "Different types for different problems. The blue ones help with energy, the white ones help with pain, the yellow ones help with staying awake for studying." The lawyer rubbed his face with both hands. "Has anyone explained why your mom was arrested?" "She's helping the police with questions," I said, repeating what the woman in pink had told me. "Probably about business regulations or taxes or something. Mom always said the government makes it hard for small business owners." That evening, the phone in the shelter office rang. A staff member called me over, holding out the receiver. "It's your mom." I grabbed it eagerly. "Mom, guess what? We're on TV. The news talked about our business, and I gave the customer list to the police so they can help us expand operations and—" "Baby, stop." Mom's voice sounded different, rough and scared. "Stop talking about the business, please." "But Mom, I collected $600 this week. The Torres family paid early and—" "Stop!" She was crying now. "Please, baby. No more. Don't talk about it anymore. Not to anyone." "I don't understand," I said, my voice small. "Did I do something wrong? I followed all the procedures you taught me. I kept perfect records. I never missed a delivery." "No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. Mommy did. Mommy did something very wrong, and I'm so sorry." The phone clicked, and she was gone. I stood there holding the dead receiver, more confused than ever. How could building a successful business be wrong? A new woman visited the next day, introducing herself as an investigator. She had boxes of evidence with her, including my marble notebook and what looked like Mom's phone records. "These text messages," she said, showing me printouts. "Can you tell me what need 30 blues by Thursday means?" "Oh, that's easy." I leaned forward helpfully. "Blue vitamins, 30 pills, Thursday delivery. That's probably for the Torres family. They always order in bulk." She showed me another message. "What about white angels for the usual spot?" "White vitamins for Jennifer. She calls them angels sometimes. The usual spot is the corner of 5th and Main. She doesn't like us coming to her apartment during the day." The investigator exchanged looks with my lawyer. She pulled out more papers, these covered in phone numbers and dates. "Do you recognize this phone number?" She pointed to one highlighted in yellow. I studied it carefully. "That's Mr. Torres. See, he called 17 times last Tuesday. He gets really anxious when deliveries are late. Mom says he's our most difficult customer, but he pays well, so we keep him happy." Page after page, I identified numbers, explained code words, and detailed delivery schedules. The investigator's face grew more grim with each answer. "You have an excellent memory," she said finally. "Thanks. Mom says a good entrepreneur needs to know their business inside and out. Oh, that reminds me. Can someone call Mr. Torres? He's probably wondering why I didn't show up yesterday. He gets really angry when—" "Mr. Torres has been arrested," the investigator said quietly. My mouth fell open. "Arrested? But why? He's just a customer. He never caused any trouble except for calling too much when orders were late." "He wasn't just a customer," she said. "He was a substance dealer, a big one. We've been trying to catch him for years." The words didn't make sense. Substance dealer? But he bought vitamins from us. Unless— "No," I said firmly. "You're wrong. We sell vitamins. Special vitamins. Mom said so." But even as I said it, something cold was creeping into my stomach. All those times Mom's hands shook. All those times customers met me at corners instead of their homes. All those times Mom cried on the phone about using her kid. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to make sense of everything. The investigator reached out like she wanted to comfort me, but I pulled back. "I want to go home," I said. "I have deliveries to make. Customers counting on me." "You can't go home," she said gently, "and there won't be any more deliveries." That night, the news ran another segment about Mom. This time, they mentioned me by name, calling me the 10-year-old substance courier. They said it was one of the worst cases of child endangerment in county history. I pulled my pillow over my head, trying to block out the sound, but I could still hear the other kids whispering about me. What a heartbreaking moment when the truth starts crashing down. The way this kid proudly shows off their business records while everyone's faces go white. My heart is breaking watching this innocent child slowly realize their whole world was built on lies. The substance dealer's kid, the one who didn't even know. How could I not have known? I thought about all the times I'd bragged to my classmates about being an entrepreneur. All the times teachers praised my ambition. All the times I'd felt special and important, carrying my backpack full of what I thought were vitamins. The woman in pink found me crying in my bunk. She sat on the edge of the bed, not saying anything, just being there. When I finally looked up, she handed me a tissue. "It's not your fault," she said. "You were just a little kid trying to help your mom." "I was good at it," I whispered. "I was really good at it." "I know," she said sadly. "That's what makes this so heartbreaking." The next morning brought more investigators, more questions, more evidence that my vitamin business was something else entirely. They showed me videos from security cameras, photos of customers, recordings of phone calls. "That's Jennifer," I pointed to a grainy photo. "She's one of our Tuesday regulars." "Jennifer is in custody," the investigator said. "She's been admitted to a treatment program." "Treatment for what?" I wanted to ask, but I was beginning to understand. All those shaking hands, all those desperate phone calls, all those customers who looked sick when they didn't get their vitamins on time because they weren't vitamins at all. My Aunt Teresa arrived at the shelter 3 days later. She hadn't seen Mom in years, and her face looked tired when she signed the custody papers. I recognized her from old photos, but she seemed smaller than I remembered. Her shoulders hunched like she was carrying something heavy. She helped me pack my few belongings while I explained the importance of maintaining customer relationships during business transitions. Her hands froze froze when she found my backup supply list tucked inside my math textbook. She read it slowly, then folded it and put it in her purse without saying anything. The drive to her house took 2 hours. I spent the time calculating lost revenue from missed deliveries and wondering if Mom had arranged for someone to cover my routes. Aunt Teresa kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, her forehead creased with worry. Her house smelled like vanilla candles and fresh laundry. Everything was organized and clean, so different from our apartment. She showed me to a small bedroom with dinosaur wallpaper and a twin bed with rocket ship sheets. While she cooked dinner, I found her 8-year-old daughter Sophia in the living room playing with plastic coins from a board game. Perfect opportunity for a business lesson. I sat down and started explaining profit margins using her play money, showing her how to calculate markup percentages. Aunt Teresa rushed in when she heard me teaching Sophia about customer acquisition costs. She scooped up the coins quickly, sending Sophia to wash her hands. Then she knelt in front of me, her eyes serious. She explained that we wouldn't be talking about the business anymore, that it wasn't a real business at all. I nodded like I understood, but inside I was calculating how many days of missed deliveries would cause us to lose our customer base entirely. The next morning, she drove me to a building with colorful walls and toys in the waiting room. Dr. Catherine introduced herself as my therapist, smiling warmly as she led me to her office. I immediately pulled out my notebook to show her my business plan, drawn carefully in crayon during art time at the shelter. She studied it with interest, asking questions about my distribution routes and customer service protocols. I explained everything eagerly, demonstrating my record-keeping system and quality control measures. She took notes while I talked, nodding thoughtfully. When our session ended, she spoke quietly with Aunt Teresa in the hallway. I heard fragments of their conversation through the door, phrases like complete indoctrination and therapeutic intervention that I didn't understand. That afternoon, Aunt Teresa enrolled me in a support group for children whose parents had addiction issues. The other kids shared stories about their parents being sick, but I explained that my situation was different. We were entrepreneurs, not addicts. The group leader listened patiently while I described our business model. One girl named Kat interrupted to say her dad had been an entrepreneur too, until the police took him away for selling substances. I corrected her immediately. We sold vitamins, not substances. The room went quiet, and several kids exchanged knowing looks that reminded me of the shelter. Back at Aunt Teresa's house, I discovered she'd been collecting newspaper clippings about Mom's case. I found them in a folder on her desk while looking for paper to draft a customer retention strategy. The headlines made my stomach hurt. Mother uses child in substance ring, and 10-year-old unwitting substance courier. I spent hours creating a media coverage scrapbook, carefully cutting out articles and organizing them by date. This was excellent publicity for our business expansion. Maybe potential investors would see our story and want to help us grow. Aunt Teresa found me with the scrapbook that evening. Her face went pale as she flipped through the pages. She sat down heavily, pulling me onto the couch beside her. She tried explaining again about substances and addiction, but I was too focused on the business implications of our media coverage. The next week brought a visit from Mom's lawyer. He explained that Mom was claiming I'd been a willing participant in the business to reduce her sentence. I nodded enthusiastically. Of course I was willing. I was proud of my contributions to our success. The lawyer rubbed his temples and tried again. He asked if I understood that what we'd been selling was illegal. I explained that Mom had all the proper permits and paid taxes. He showed me documents that proved otherwise, but I assumed they were mistaken. When the prosecutor visited, I provided even more helpful details. I showed her my customer satisfaction surveys and explained our innovative loyalty program. She asked if I knew the business well, and I confirmed that I knew everything, every customer, every route, every price point. She thanked me for my honesty while exchanging worried looks with my lawyer. I didn't understand why everyone seemed so concerned about our successful business model. The news came that Carlos had been arrested based on my detailed descriptions. I worried immediately about supply chain disruption and asked if someone had notified our customers about potential delays. The adults in the room looked at me with expressions I was starting to recognize, a mixture of sadness and disbelief. School became complicated. The district placed me in a different school where nobody knew my story, but I couldn't help talking about my business experience. When we had to write essays about our role models, I wrote about Mom teaching me entrepreneurship. My new teacher, Mrs. O'Catherine, called Aunt Teresa after reading my essay about former business experience. There was another meeting, more concerned faces, more people trying to explain things I didn't want to understand. A judge ordered me to stop discussing the case publicly. This confused me greatly. Didn't he understand that publicity was essential for business growth? How could we expand our customer base without marketing? Meanwhile, investigators discovered Mom's commissary account was receiving deposits from unknown sources. I recognized some of the names on her visitor log as our bulk discount customers and felt relieved they were supporting her during this difficult time. Aunt Teresa's husband, Robert, started complaining about having the substance dealer kid in their house. He worried about what his co-workers would think, how it might affect his reputation. Their arguments grew louder each night, though they tried to whisper. I attempted to ease the tension by offering to teach their family customer service techniques. I created a presentation using Sophia's crayons, outlining how they could improve their household efficiency using business principles I'd learned. The presentation didn't go well. Robert demanded I leave their house, saying he wouldn't expose Sophia to criminal influences. Aunt Teresa cried while packing my things again. I apologized for not explaining the business model clearly enough and promised to create better visual aids next time. The second emergency placement was with an older couple who specialized in troubled children. They had strict rules about discussing my past, but I couldn't help sharing customer service tips during dinner. They looked exhausted as I explained optimal delivery routes and inventory management. More legal preparation followed. The prosecutor realized my detailed memory would provide extensive evidence. I practiced my testimony by creating flowcharts of our distribution network and explaining our innovative pricing strategies. Every business lesson mom taught me was documented thoroughly. Then came the day I saw mom at a pre-trial hearing. She looked different, thin and gray, like she'd aged 10 years in a few weeks. Her hands shook worse than ever as she sat at the defendant's table. When our eyes met across the courtroom, she mouthed words I couldn't understand. I mouthed back that business was hard, but we'd get through it together. She started crying then, putting her head in her hands. I didn't understand why she was so upset. Every business faced challenges. Therapy intensified as the trial approached. Dr. Catherine documented what she called complete lack of trauma recognition. I thought she meant I was handling the business setback well. I created more business plans during our sessions, exploring new market opportunities for when mom got out. The foster siblings at my new placement avoided me after learning about my background. They whispered about the substance dealer kid and moved away when I entered rooms. I tried explaining that we were entrepreneurs, not criminals, but they wouldn't listen. Everything changed when Grandma arrived from Puerto Rico. She hadn't seen me since the vitamin business started. She spoke mostly Spanish, but I understood when she cried over my business records. She kept pointing at entries and shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. She showed me pictures of mom before the business started, smiling, healthy, playing with me at the park. Then she showed me the dates, pointing at Dad's death certificate. The timeline matched exactly when our vitamin business began. Videos surfaced during trial preparation, showing me at age 8 counting money, while mom coached me about customer satisfaction. The prosecutor played them during a meeting, and all the adults looked sick. I felt proud seeing my younger self demonstrating such business acumen. Other parents from my old school provided testimony about finding substances in their children's backpacks. The pills were traced back to our distribution network. I worried about quality control. We'd always been careful about inventory management. My academic records revealed a pattern. Perfect attendance on delivery days, but frequent absences when mom was sick. The correlation was clear evidence of my dedication to the business, though the prosecutor seemed to interpret it differently. Mom's defense attorney requested a competency evaluation after reviewing my testimony preparation. He said the level of exploitation was beyond anything he'd seen. I thought he meant I was exceptionally skilled for my age. The prosecutor refused plea deals based on what she called severe child endangerment. I created a presentation about how our business had actually taught me valuable skills, but nobody wanted to see it. During testimony practice, I explained our loyalty discount program in detail. I'd developed a sophisticated system where regular customers earned points toward free products. The prosecutor documented every word while shaking her head. A child psychologist testified that I showed signs of criminal grooming from my earliest memories. I thought she meant I'd been groomed for business success and felt proud that professionals recognized my training. Then came a message from mom's cellmate through her lawyer. She wanted me to know she was getting clean. I assumed she meant maintaining better hygiene in prison and made a note to send her some soap. The trial began with me as the star witness. I'd made myself an entrepreneur pin during craft time at therapy, wearing it proudly on my shirt. Dr. Catherine had tried convincing me to remove it, but I insisted it showed my professional identity. My testimony started with explaining how I learned to count money at age 6. The jury looked shocked, but I thought they were impressed by my early business training. I described our growth strategy and customer acquisition methods in detail. The prosecutor guided me through a timeline of events. Each answer revealed more about our operations. I explained inventory management, quality control, customer relations, and financial planning. The court reporter typed frantically to capture all the business details. When I described hiding products in my teddy bear for safety during previous police visits, Mom started sobbing. I felt bad that she was upset, but continued explaining our security protocols. Good businesses needed contingency plans. The defense cross-examination backfired spectacularly. Their questions prompted me to provide even more operational details. I explained our pricing structure, bulk discounts, customer loyalty programs, and expansion plans. The defense attorney looked defeated as I cheerfully answered every question. During a recess, the judge had to stop proceedings when I asked if we could restart the business after Mom got out. The entire courtroom went silent. I used the break to network, handing out handwritten business cards to potential investors in the gallery. At lunch, I overheard prosecutors discussing my case as the worst child endangerment they'd seen. I felt proud that our business model was so memorable, it stood out among all their cases. The afternoon session revealed medical records I didn't know existed. Apparently, I'd been hospitalized at age 9 with exhaustion. The doctor testified it was actually withdrawal from secondhand exposure to substances. I remembered that week as a particularly busy sales period. More medical evidence showed developmental delays caused by handling substances. My small size wasn't genetic, but resulted from exposure to toxic substances. I thought about all the times I'd carefully counted pills, making sure customers got exactly what they ordered. Mom's defense shifted to arguing addiction as a mitigating factor. They stopped claiming I was a willing participant after my enthusiastic testimony made that impossible. Mom admitted everything on the stand while I took notes for future reference. Carlos testified as part of his plea deal. He confirmed Mom specifically used me because police don't suspect children. I felt frustrated that he was revealing trade secrets on the stand. These were competitive advantages we'd worked hard to develop. When Mom broke down completely during her testimony, admitting everything while sobbing uncontrollably, I continued documenting her statements. This would be valuable for our business memoir someday. The verdict came quickly, guilty on all counts. As the judge read the charges, I raised my hand to ask who would inherit the business now. The courtroom erupted in whispers while the judge called for order. The sentencing hearing arrived 2 weeks later. I sat in the gallery wearing my best shirt, the one with my handmade entrepreneur pin attached. Dr. Catherine sat beside me, having explained repeatedly that Mom would receive her punishment today. I'd prepared a business continuity plan to present to the judge, outlining how operations could resume under new management. When they brought Mom in wearing orange, I barely recognized her. She'd lost more more weight and her hair hung limp around her face. I waved enthusiastically, but she just stared at the floor. The prosecutor stood first, describing the extent of my involvement in detail. Each fact made the judge's face grow more stern. Mom's lawyer argued for leniency based on her addiction and cooperation. He mentioned her completion of a jail treatment program and read letters from other inmates describing her remorse. I took notes about these potential character references for future business ventures. The judge finally spoke, his voice heavy with disgust. He called it the worst case of child exploitation he'd seen in 30 years on the bench. When he announced 12 years minimum, I raised my hand immediately. The bailiff moved toward me, but Dr. Catherine grabbed my arm, shaking her head firmly. I watched them lead Mom away without getting to ask my question about business succession planning. Dr. Catherine guided me out quickly while I tried to hand my continuity plan to court staff. Nobody would take it. The therapeutic boarding school looked like a regular school from outside, but inside everything was different. No backpacks allowed in rooms, supervised phone calls only, group therapy every day. They assigned me a roommate named Marcus, who'd been there 6 months already. He showed me around while explaining the rules. No discussing criminal activities, no recruiting, no business talk. I lasted 2 days before trying to explain profit margins during math class. The teacher redirected me immediately, but I'd already drawn a supply chain diagram on the board. That earned me my first individual session with the school therapist, Dr. Patricia, who specialized in criminal thinking patterns. She asked me to describe a typical day before Mom's arrest. I explained my morning routine, checking inventory, reviewing delivery schedules, confirming customer appointments. She took notes while I detailed my quality control processes and customer service standards. When I finished, she showed me a different kind of chart, one that mapped how Mom had trained me from age 6 to normalize substance dealing. I studied it carefully, but kept finding business insights instead of what she wanted me to see. The progression from counting money to managing territory seemed like natural skill development to me. Dr. Patricia sighed and scheduled me for daily sessions. Group therapy was harder. Other kids talked about their parents' crimes with anger or shame. When my turn came, I still called it the family business and explained our innovative distribution model. A boy named David interrupted to describe finding his little sister unconscious from pills she'd bought at school. The therapist asked if I understood the connection. I suggested better quality control measures. That night, Marcus told me about his dad's meth lab, how he'd helped cook since age 8, thinking they were making medicine, how his sister died from contaminated product, how it took him 4 months at the school to say the word substances instead of medicine. I listened while organizing my notes from the day, still categorizing everything as business education. The breakthrough started small. During art therapy, they asked us to draw our families. I drew an organizational chart with Mom as CEO and me as operations manager. The therapist asked me to draw my family doing something together that wasn't work. I couldn't think of anything. My pencil hovered over blank paper for the full hour. Carlos's full testimony transcript arrived as part of ongoing investigations. Dr. Patricia read portions during our session. The part about Mom trading my services for substances when money was short made me pause. I'd thought those were strategic partnerships. Carlos described Mom bringing me to substance houses, using me as insurance because dealers wouldn't hurt a kid. I asked to see the transcript myself, reading Carlos's words directly, how Mom would cry after using me for particularly dangerous deliveries, how she'd increase her own use to cope with guilt, how the cycle kept spiraling. Something shifted. I put the papers down and stared at the wall. This moment with Carlos's testimony is crushing my heart. The way this poor kid finally starts to see the truth through those pages, watching their whole world crumble as they realize those strategic partnerships were actually their mom trading them for substances. Dr. Patricia waited. I picked up the transcript again, finding the part where Carlos described Mom nodding off while I counted money in the corner, how I'd cover her with a blanket and lock the door, thinking she was tired from working hard, how dealers would laugh at the little businessman while Mom lay unconscious. My hands started shaking, not like Mom's desperate tremors, but something new. Dr. Patricia asked what I was feeling. I couldn't name it. She suggested we walk outside. The school had a small garden where students grew vegetables, real vegetables, not code words for substances. As we walked between tomato plants, Dr. Patricia asked about my earliest memory of Mom before the business. I remembered a birthday party, maybe my 5th, with a homemade cake and Mom singing, before Dad died, before the business, before her hands shook. That night I couldn't sleep. Marcus asked what was wrong. I told him about the birthday cake, how Mom's voice sounded different then. He said his dad used to build model airplanes with him before the lab. We lay in our beds, sharing fragments of the people our parents used to be. The next group session, when asked about my family, I said my mom was sick. The words felt strange, like wearing clothes that didn't fit. The therapist nodded encouragingly. I added that she'd made me sick too, though I wasn't sure how yet. David reached over and squeezed my shoulder. Days passed in rigid routine. Classes, therapy, activities designed to reshape thinking patterns. I stopped drawing business plans during free time, started reading books about addiction instead. The school library had dozens of them, their pages worn from use. I learned about dopamine and dependency, about how addiction rewires brains, about genetic predisposition and environmental triggers. During a family therapy session via video call, Aunt Teresa cried when I asked if Mom had shown signs before Dad died. She described Mom in high school, honor roll, volleyball team, planning to be a nurse, how Dad's cancer diagnosis derailed everything, how the pills started as legitimate prescriptions for his pain, how Mom started taking them too, unable to watch him suffer. I asked about the business timeline again. Aunt Teresa confirmed it started 3 months after the funeral, when Mom's grief was swallowing her whole. She'd tried to help, but Mom insisted she had everything under control. A vitamin distribution business sounded harmless enough. Aunt Teresa never imagined Mom would use me. That afternoon in individual therapy, I cried cried for the first time since the arrest, not the frustrated tears of a businessman facing setbacks, but something deeper. Dr. Patricia handed me tissues while I struggled to breathe between sobs. When I finally spoke, the words surprised me. She was supposed to protect me. The entrepreneur pin sat in my desk drawer for weeks before I could look at it again. One evening, I brought it to group therapy, explained how I'd made it, how proud I'd been to wear it during testimony, how it represented everything I thought I was. The therapist asked what I wanted to do with it now. I didn't know. David suggested burning it. Marcus thought I should keep it as a reminder. Others shared what they'd done with symbols of their past, buried them, threw them away, transformed them into something new. I held the cheap plastic pin, feeling its weight despite how light it was. The school had a fire pit for therapeutic ceremonies. That Friday night, they lit it for anyone ready to let something go. 3 of us participated. A girl burned her father's arrest report. Marcus threw in a photo of his dad's lab. I stood at the edge, pin warming in my palm, remembering all the times I'd proudly explained our business model. The pin melted quickly, plastic curling and blackening. I watched it disappear, waiting to feel different. Nothing changed immediately. But that night, I slept without reviewing delivery schedules in my head for the first time in years. Physical education became my unexpected outlet. Running laps cleared the mental spreadsheets. Playing basketball required focus on the present moment, not profit projections. My teammates didn't know my full story, just that my mom was in prison. They treated me like any other kid who couldn't make a layup. One afternoon, the coach pulled me aside. He'd been watching me organize equipment, creating inventory systems without realizing it. He didn't scold me. Instead, he asked if I'd like to be team manager, a legitimate position using my skills appropriately. I accepted, then spent therapy discussing why it felt different from the business. Mom's letters started arriving after 3 months. The first ones were full of apologies and promises I'd heard before. Dr. Patricia helped me write responses that set boundaries. I told Mom about school, about basketball, about learning to see myself as more than her business partner. I didn't mention still calculating lost revenue sometimes. The news came through official channels. Mom had completed her prison substance program and earned her GED. She'd started facilitating addiction support groups for other inmates. Her letters changed too, becoming less about apologies and more about understanding. She wrote about her own therapy, about facing what she'd done to me, about learning to separate grief from addiction. I wrote back about burning the pin, about crying in therapy, about playing basketball without thinking of profit opportunities, about how some days I still caught myself analyzing customer behavior in the lunch line. Recovery wasn't linear for either of us. 6 months in, during career planning class, they asked us to envision our futures. Other kids talked about becoming mechanics, teachers, counselors. When my turn came, I surprised myself by saying, social worker. The teacher asked why. I thought about all the kids like me who might be counting pills right now, thinking they're entrepreneurs, who might need someone to recognize the signs. The school arranged volunteer opportunities at a community center. I helped with after-school programs, watching for kids who seemed too knowledgeable about adult problems. One boy bragged about helping his uncle's import business. I recognized the pride in his voice, the way he puffed up when describing his responsibilities. I told the program director, who knew how to report concerns properly. My testimony helped convict 2 other parents who'd used their children as substance runners. I attended one trial, sitting with the prosecutor who'd handled Mom's case. The defendant's daughter was 12, had been dealing since age 9. She testified eagerly about her sales records, wearing a handmade business girl badge. I saw myself in her confused face when the verdict was read. Afterward, the prosecutor thanked me for coming, said my case had changed how they approached child exploitation in substance crimes. They'd developed new interview protocols, better support systems. I felt something I couldn't name, not pride exactly, but purpose maybe. Like my story meant something beyond profit and loss. The year-end ceremony included academic awards and progress recognition. I'd maintained good grades while learning to engage with subjects beyond their business applications. When they called my name for Most Improved Perspective, I walked to the stage without my entrepreneur pin, accepted the certificate as just a kid who'd survived something terrible and was learning to heal. That night, I called Aunt Teresa, told her about the award, about my college plans, about wanting to help kids like me. She cried happy tears, said Sophia had been asking when I'd visit again. We made plans for supervised home visits with clear boundaries about what topics were off limits. I felt ready to be just a cousin, not a business mentor. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday. State University, social work program, partial scholarship based on my essay about transformation. I'd written about the birthday cake, about Mom's hands shaking, about burning the pin, about learning that real success meant breaking cycles, not perpetuating them, about understanding that the greatest business model was helping kids escape the ones that were culling them. Dr. Patricia smiled when I showed her the letter. We'd been working on future planning that didn't involve underground networks or profit schemes. She asked how it felt to have legitimate goals. I admitted I still sometimes calculated the scholarship amount against potential substance revenue. Recovery meant acknowledging those thoughts, not pretending they'd disappeared. Mom's parole hearing was scheduled for 5 years out. I wrote a letter for her file, supporting her release with conditions, continued treatment, supervised visits only, no unsupervised contact until I was ready. I described my progress, my plans, my understanding of what she'd taken from me. Also, my hope that she could recover too, become the person she was before grief and pills swallowed her whole. The last day at therapeutic boarding school felt surreal. Marcus had left months earlier, was working at his uncle's legitimate auto shop. David was starting community college. We exchanged contact information, promising to stay in touch, not as former substance dealers' kids, but as friends who understood each other's journey. I packed carefully, leaving behind the mental inventory systems and customer tracking habits, taking with me the basketball team photo, the acceptance letter, the knowledge that I'd survived something that could have destroyed me. Dr. Patricia hugged me goodbye, reminding me that healing wasn't a destination, but a daily choice. Aunt Teresa picked me up in the same car that had first driven me away from everything I'd known. This time, I didn't spend the ride calculating losses. Instead, I watched the scenery, asked about Sophia's school play, shared my class schedule for fall. We stopped for lunch at a regular restaurant where no one knew my story, where I was just another teenager heading to college. That evening, sorting through old belongings in Aunt Teresa's garage, I found one of my original notebooks. The careful customer records, delivery schedules, satisfaction surveys, all written in a child's handwriting, documenting crimes I hadn't understood. I sat on the concrete floor, reading through pages that once made me proud. Aunt Teresa found me there an hour later, asked if I wanted to keep it for evidence or therapy. I shook my head. We burned it in the backyard fire pit, watching years of meticulous substance-dealing records turn to ash. This time, I felt the weight lift. Not completely, some burdens you carry forever, but enough to breathe easier. College orientation included warnings about campus substance culture. I sat through presentations about recognizing dealers, avoiding dangerous situations, seeking help for addiction. Felt the irony of needing warnings about something I'd mastered before middle school. My roommate complained about the boring safety lectures. I took notes, seeing them from the other side now. The first social work class discussed child welfare systems. The professor asked why we'd chosen this field. Students shared stories of inspiring teachers, family experiences, desire to help. When my turn came, I simply said my mom had been sick and I wanted to help families heal. True enough, without the details that would mark me as different. Study groups formed naturally around shared interests. I joined one focused on addiction and family services. Found myself contributing insights that surprised classmates, understanding enabling behaviors, recognizing manipulation tactics, knowing how addiction rippled through families. They assumed I'd done extensive research. I let them think that. Part-time work at the campus tutoring center used my organizational skills appropriately, creating study guides, scheduling sessions, tracking progress, all legitimate applications of abilities I'd developed for darker purposes. My supervisor praised my attention to detail. I accepted the compliment without explaining its origins. Mom called on my birthday, our first conversation outside official channels. Her voice sounded different, clearer, but sadder. She wished me happy birthday, asked about school, shared her own progress, mentioned completing vocational training, planning for eventual release. We talked for 15 minutes about normal things, both pretending we'd always been normal people. The anniversary of her arrest passed quietly. I attended classes, worked my shift, had dinner with friends who didn't know the significance of the date. That night, I wrote in the journal, Dr. Patricia had suggested I keep. Reflected on how far I'd come from the kid proudly wearing an entrepreneur pin in court, how far I still had to go. Professor Williams assigned a research project on innovative intervention strategies. I proposed studying early identification of children used in substance operations. She approved enthusiastically, offering to connect me with local agencies. I accepted, knowing I brought unique perspective to the research. My bibliography would include academic sources, not customer testimonials. The presentation went well. Classmates asked thoughtful questions about recognizing signs, supporting victims, preventing recruitment. I answered professionally, citing studies and statistics. Only Professor Williams noticed my hands shaking slightly when I described how children rationalized their involvement. She nodded encouragingly, letting me finish without comment. Winter break meant returning to Aunt Teresa's house. Sophia had grown taller, was learning multiplication. She asked if I could help with math homework. I agreed, then caught myself turning word problems into profit calculations. Stopped, apologized, started over with normal tutoring. Sophia didn't notice the pause, but Aunt Teresa squeezed my shoulder gratefully. The victim services coordinator called about another trial needing testimony. A parent in neighboring county, using 3 children as runners. The youngest was 7. They wanted me to explain how normalization worked, how children could testify proudly about crimes they didn't recognize. I agreed, knowing it meant reliving memories I'd rather forget. This time, I sat in the witness box as an expert, not a victim. Explained grooming techniques, psychological manipulation, the pride children felt when praised for criminal skills. Watched the jury's horror as I described thinking substance dealing was entrepreneurship. Saw the defendant's children in the gallery, wearing matching Daddy's Helpers t-shirts. Felt my heart break for their future revelation. The guilty verdict brought relief but not satisfaction. Those children would need years of therapy to understand what happened to them. Would probably defend their father through multiple foster placements, through court proceedings, through the slow recognition that their childhood was built on lies. I hoped they'd find their own Dr. Patricias, their own therapeutic boarding schools, their own paths to healing. Spring semester brought internship placements. I requested the Child Advocacy Center, knowing they dealt with exploitation cases. The director interviewed me carefully, sensing there was more to my interest than academic curiosity. I shared enough truth to establish credibility without overwhelming details. She accepted me, assigning a supervisor who specialized in trauma-informed practice. The first case file I read involved a 9-year-old found with substance packaging materials in her school backpack. Her mother claimed ignorance, said the girl must have found them somewhere. The social worker's notes described the child's detailed knowledge of pricing, her pride in helping mommy's home business, her confusion about why everyone was upset. I recognized every word. My supervisor noticed my reaction, asked if I needed a break. I shook my head, suggested interview strategies based on building trust while avoiding reinforcing criminal pride. She listened thoughtfully, implemented several suggestions. The girl eventually disclosed 2 years of substance running, thinking she'd been earning money for family vacations. Each case taught me something about my own story. The boy who thought he was protecting his father by keeping perfect records. The girl who believed her mother's boyfriend was teaching her valuable life skills. The siblings who competed over who could move more product, seeking approval through criminal excellence. All variations of my own confusion, my own misplaced pride. Mom's Mom's letters evolved into something resembling normal correspondence. She shared books she was reading, described prison job training, mentioned women she was sponsoring in recovery. I wrote about internships, classes, basketball games. We developed a rhythm of connection without discussing the past directly. Both understanding it lived between every line. The scholarship committee invited me to speak at their annual fundraising dinner. They wanted inspiration, triumph over adversity. I agreed, but insisted on honesty. No fairy tale ending where everything was fine. Prepared remarks about ongoing recovery, about days I still thought like a dealer, about choosing healing repeatedly, about success meaning more than survival. The speech resonated differently than expected. Several donors approached afterward, sharing their own family addiction stories. One woman pressed a check into my hand, whispering that her son had used her grandchildren similarly. That one was in prison, one in foster care, one aged out and disappeared. She hoped supporting education might help another family's different ending. Summer brought the opportunity to develop programming at the Advocacy Center. I designed workshops for foster parents caring for children from substance-involved families, explained how to recognize business mindset, redirect organizational skills, validate intelligence while challenging criminal thinking, created materials that would have helped Aunt Teresa understand me sooner. The first workshop had 12 participants. They asked practical questions: how to respond when children bragged about substance knowledge, how to handle resistance to seeing parents as criminals, how to support identity development beyond family business roles. I answered from experience and education, finding balance between personal insight and professional boundaries. One foster mother stayed after, tears in her eyes. Her foster son had been drawing business plans for weeks. She'd thought it was harmless imagination until recognizing patterns I'd described. We talked for an hour about validating his intelligence while gently challenging his framework, about patience, consistency, believing change was possible even when children couldn't see it yet. The center director offered me a permanent position after graduation, entry level, but with growth potential, working directly with exploited children. I accepted immediately, knowing this was where my story led. Not to entrepreneurship or business success, but to interrupting cycles, protecting innocence, helping children understand they were victims, not partners. Senior year began with advanced placement at the center. Full caseload, supervision responsibilities, court testimony as needed. I developed assessment tools for identifying substance-involved children, training protocols for new workers, support groups for teens aging out of the system. Used every organizational skill Mom had taught me, redirected toward healing instead of harm. The thesis committee approved my research proposal on identity reformation in criminally exploited children. My advisor suggested submitting for publication, believing it could influence practice standards. I agreed, spent months crafting academic language around lived experience. The way this young person transforms their painful knowledge into actual tools for healing is incredible. Creating workshops that teach foster parents how to recognize when kids brag about dealing, that's using personal experience to change lives. Citations and statistics supporting what I knew in my bones, that children could believe anything if the people they loved told them it was true. Mom's parole hearing approached faster than expected. Good behavior, program completion, documented remorse. I submitted a measured support letter, acknowledging her progress, maintaining boundaries, requesting continued supervision. The board approved release with conditions including mandatory treatment, restricted contact, regular monitoring. I felt relief and anxiety simultaneously. She looked small walking out of prison, older, grayer, but clearer than I'd seen her since before Dad died. We hugged briefly under supervision, both crying. She whispered apologies I'd already accepted. I whispered forgiveness she was still learning to believe. We separated knowing the real work was just beginning. The transitional housing program placed her 40 minutes from campus, close enough for supervised visits, far enough to maintain independence. Our first meeting outside prison happened at a neutral restaurant, advocate present. We talked about her job search, my graduation plans, anything except the business that had defined us, both relearning how to be mother and child without crime between us. Graduation day arrived with unexpected emotions. Aunt Teresa, Robert, and Sophia sat in the audience. Mom watched via live stream, respecting boundaries while celebrating progress. When they called my name, I walked across stage as someone I couldn't have imagined at 10. Educated, healing, purposeful. The entrepreneur pin was long gone, replaced by understanding that success meant breaking cycles, not building them. The Advocacy Center decorated my new office with congratulations banners. My first official case as a licensed social worker involved a 12-year-old found selling pills at school. His father insisted the boy had stolen them, acted alone. The child proudly explained his distribution system, customer base, profit margins. I recognized every word, every gesture, every misplaced pride. I introduced myself gently, built rapport through business talk before gradually shifting perspective. Watched his confusion mirror mine years ago. Saw him struggle between loyalty and logic. Held space for his anger when understanding began. Promised he wasn't alone, that other kids had survived this revelation. That being smart meant more than running successful substance operations. Months passed in purposeful routine. Home visits, court testimonies, family sessions, staff trainings. Each child's story echoed differently. Some angry, some proud, some confused, all harmed by adults who should have protected them. I developed specialization in criminal exploitation, consulted on cases throughout the state, published articles, presented at conferences, built reputation on expertise born from experience. Mom achieved 1 year clean, then 2, got promoted at her restaurant job, moved to better housing, built recovery network. Our relationship evolved slowly, monthly lunches becoming weekly calls, supervised visits becoming independent meetings, always careful, always boundaried, always acknowledging the past while building something new, both understanding that healing meant accepting what couldn't be undone. The call came on a Thursday. 10-year-old twins found running sophisticated integrated med distribution network at their elementary school. Parents claimed ignorance despite detailed records in childish handwriting. The prosecutor wanted expert testimony about normalization, manipulation, the pride children felt in criminal accomplishment. I agreed, knowing it meant standing where I'd once stood, speaking truth I'd once denied. The courtroom looked different from the witness box. Same formal procedures, same confused children, same desperate parents. But I sat as professional now, translating their experience for jury understanding, explained how love could be weaponized, intelligence exploited, childhood stolen through praise for criminal success, watched recognition dawn on jurors' faces, horror at what adults could convince children to believe. The twins' testimony broke my heart. Eager explanations of customer service, quality control, expansion plans, proud descriptions of helping mommy and daddy's special vitamin business, confusion at adults' reactions, insistence that they were good helpers, smart kids, successful entrepreneurs. Every word I'd once spoken, every belief I'd once held, reflected in their earnest faces. Guilty verdicts brought no satisfaction, only relief that intervention could begin. The twins would need years to understand what happened, would probably defend their parents through foster care, through therapy, through the slow acceptance that their childhood achievements were actually exploitation. I hoped they'd find support, healing, purpose beyond what was stolen from them. My phone rang as I left the courthouse. The Advocacy Center had received a grant for expanding services. They wanted me to lead the new division focused on criminally exploited children. More staff, more resources, more ability to interrupt cycles. I accepted immediately, knowing every child we reached might avoid years of confusion, might understand sooner that they were victims, not criminals. That evening, I called Mom to share the news. She cried happy tears, said she was proud of who I'd become. We talked about the twins, about her own recognition of what she'd done, about breaking cycles through different choices, about building something legitimate that helped instead of harmed, about redemption looking like daily decisions to do better. I thought about the 10-year-old who'd worn an entrepreneur pin to court, who'd bragged about customer lists and profit margins, who'd believed success meant running a thriving substance operation. That child felt like a stranger now, separated by years of therapy, education, understanding, but also part of me, informing every interaction with confused kids defending criminal parents. The work was hard, watching children slowly recognize their exploitation, supporting foster families through difficult behaviors, testifying in cases that triggered memories, building programs while managing personal recovery. Some days I wondered if choosing different career might have been easier. Most days I knew this was exactly where I belonged. 5 years after the arrest, I stood before another conference room, this time teaching prosecutors, social workers, therapists about recognizing and supporting criminally exploited children, sharing strategies for building trust while challenging criminal thinking, explaining how intelligence and trauma intersected in ways that complicated healing, using my story to illuminate paths forward for other children. The questions came thoughtfully: how to validate business skills while reframing their application, when to challenge denial versus allowing processing time, how to support identity development beyond family criminal enterprise. I answered from integrated perspective, lived experience informing professional practice, personal insight enhancing evidence-based interventions. One participant stayed after, introducing herself as a guardian ad litem. Her case involved siblings who'd been running substances since elementary school. Now teenagers, they still insisted they'd been junior entrepreneurs. She felt lost, unsure how to advocate for children who didn't see themselves as victims. We talked for hours, developing strategies specific to their situation. That night, I wrote in my journal about full circles, about transformation, meaning not just healing, but helping others heal, about success redefined as breaking cycles rather than building criminal enterprises, about the 10-year-old entrepreneur becoming the adult who helped other 10-year-olds understand they deserved better, about finding purpose in the ruins of exploitation. Mom reached 5 years clean, qualifying for reduced supervision. We celebrated quietly, both understanding the significance. She'd rebuilt her life through daily choices, meetings, sponsorship, accountability. I'd rebuilt mine through therapy, education, service, boundaries. Neither journey was complete. Recovery never really ends, but both had traveled far from where we started. The Advocacy Center expanded again, partnering with schools to identify at-risk children earlier. I developed screening tools, trained counselors, created intervention protocols, caught kids before criminal involvement solidified, while confusion could shift to understanding more easily, prevented some from needing the painful revelation that their family business was actually exploitation. Each saved child felt like redemption, not erasure of my own experience, but transformation of it into something useful. Every confused kid who learned to see themselves as valuable beyond crime. Every foster parent who understood their child's resistance. Every prosecutor who recognized exploitation versus willing participation. All building towards systemic change, one interaction at a time. The anniversary of burning my entrepreneur pin passed without fanfare. Just another day of meetings, case files, court preparation. But I paused that evening, remembering the plastic melting, the identity dissolving, the first step toward becoming who I am now. Grateful for the journey, even while wishing it hadn't been necessary. Understanding that sometimes the worst experiences forge the most meaningful purposes. 10 years after the arrest, I became what I'd never imagined. Someone who transformed trauma into service, who used exploitation to prevent exploitation, who helped children understand they were more than their family's crimes. Not the entrepreneur I'd once proudly claimed to be, but something more valuable. Someone who recognized confused kids defending criminal parents. Someone who could sit with their resistance, validate their intelligence, guide them toward truth. Someone who proved that cycles could be broken, that children could heal, that the worst beginnings didn't determine endings. The real business success wasn't measured in profit margins or customer satisfaction. It was measured in children's lives redirected, in families healing, in cycles interrupted, in every kid who learned they were victims, not partners, in every parent who chose recovery over continued harm, in every professional who better understood criminal exploitation, in building something that helped instead of harmed, that protected instead of exploited, that valued children beyond their utility. That was the entrepreneur I became, not dealing substances through childhood confusion, but dealing hope through hard-won understanding, not building criminal networks, but building support systems, not counting pills and cash, but counting lives changed, futures salvaged, children protected. The business model I'd once proudly defended had nearly destroyed me. The life I built from its ashes helped ensure other children wouldn't need the same painful journey from exploitation to understanding. Some stories don't have clean endings. Mine certainly doesn't. Mom still struggles some days. I still catch myself thinking like a dealer occasionally. The twins from that case are still in therapy, slowly accepting their parents' crimes. Other children are counting pills right now, believing they're entrepreneurs. The work continues, imperfect but purposeful. But if that 10-year-old could see me now, educated, employed, helping kids like us, maybe they'd understand that real success was never about the business. It was about surviving it, healing from it, ensuring others don't have to, about transforming the worst thing that happened into the foundation for something better, about proving that children are more than their exploitation, that healing is possible, that cycles can be broken one confused kid at a time. That's my story. Not the entrepreneurial success I once imagined, but something more valuable. A life built on understanding instead of exploitation. Purpose found in prevention. Success measured in protected childhoods rather than profit margins. The business that stole my childhood became the motivation for ensuring other children keep theirs. And that's the only entrepreneurship that ever really mattered. Subscribe for more content. It helps me out a lot, and thanks for watching till the end.